Hello, everybody, and welcome to a very special edition of Cheap Heat Radio. This, of course, has been our much-hyped 90-minute shoot interview today, and we will be hearing from Derrick King, Mr. Memphis himself, here in just momentarily, and we've got a lot of questions for him. And this is it. Remember, Cheap Heat Radio brought to you by www.wrestlingrightonline.com, your source for news for professional wrestling in the Southeast. So be sure and check it out, wrestlingriotonline.com. Anyway, like I say, this is a lot of people have been looking forward to this. I've gotten a lot of feedback for this interview. A lot of people have sent me in questions that they wanted me to ask Derrick today. So we'll be talking with him about a number of topics, how he got in the business, Power Pro, OVW, of course, his current promotion, besides working in Memphis, also works in TLCW, which has a big show this Saturday night, December the 8th in Ripley, Tennessee. And, of course, Nick Dinsmore, Eugene's going to be there, along with all the other TLCW stars. So it should be a good show. And we'll be asking Derrick about that show as well. Along with a host of other topics. If you would like to call in and ask Derrick a question yourself, if you got any comments, questions, anything you want to address with him, our call-in number is 347-838-8101. So just dial that number and we'll put you through and we'll let you speak to Derrick yourself and ask him any questions you may have during the course of this interview. This is the longest show we've done yet here on Cheap Heat Radio, but it should be a good one. Like I say, got a lot of questions to ask, and Derrick should be calling in here momentarily, and we will get him right on the air and get this interview started. So, in the meantime, until we get him to call in, big show on Raw last night. We've seen Chris Jericho in the ring last night with Umaga, which was an interesting match. But one humorous bit that I found amusing was Mr. Kennedy when he brought out, of course, the friends from Shawn Michaels' past, being Marty Jannetty, Diesel, and Razor Ramon. The little comment of glad you can make it tonight to Razor Ramon, of course, taking a shot at Scott Hall's no-show for the TNA pay-per-view Sunday night, which I thought was humorous, because very rarely do they ever acknowledge TNA on WWE, so that was fun. But, well, all right, we're still waiting for Derrick to call in. He should be calling in here momentarily. Spoke with him on the internet a few minutes ago, and he is set to call in. So hopefully he's not going to pull a Scott Hall on us here and no show us. In the meantime, Memphis Wrestling, of course, he was on there this past Saturday, and another Southern Tag Team title match with Derrick tagging with Johnny Dotson, and they took on, let's see, who was it they took on? Grind and Flex, of course, Too Cool 2, and that match went to the expiration of time, which was only 5 minutes, but from what I hear, it was a good match nonetheless, so let's see here. Find some of the other results from that show. The big talk for some of the big talk from that show, of course, was the strip tease from Sue Young, who came out to seduce Jerry Lawler, which isn't all that hard to do, but got Kevin Wyatt a win over the King, and that video made its way to YouTube pretty quick and is making the rounds. I've noticed it was on the Wrestling Classics boards and a number of message boards in the past few days, and has been quite popular. So something there to get Memphis some attention anyway, even if it is Jerry Lawler gawking at a much younger girl, but like I say again, not that that's anything new or out of the ordinary. Of course, they continued the angle with Brian Christopher and Ali Stevens this past Saturday, and looks like Brian's going to be going completely heel now. So I guess that should make for some interesting matches. Ali is very popular in Memphis, and the fans seem to be rallying behind him, so it should make for a good angle. And, well, let's see, I'm kind of at a loss because we're going to go straight into the interview, but so far, still waiting for Derrick to call in. So if there's anybody else out there who's listening who'd like to call in, feel free. We'll interview you in the meantime, whoever you may be. And instead of sitting here with dead air. All right, well, what else have we got to talk about? I didn't have anything else really prepared. Let's go over to, let's see here. Guess we'll talk more about last night's Raw. If I can pull up the results here, because I didn't really watch it all the way through, just kind of skimmed through it as usual. But another story is this morning is when Kurt Angle is in court on his DUI charge from a few weeks back. And we'll see how that turns out for him. I can pull that story up here. All right, yeah, he was charged in October for DUI, and they got a call from police saying that he was driving erratically. They called, and the cops tracked Angle down and found him at his residence, where he there failed a sobriety test. And this morning he is going to be in court on that charge, so we'll see how that turns out for him. All right, I just got a message here saying that Derrick should be calling in the next few seconds. Okay. Well, let's hope so, because so far things are not going well, and I do believe we now have him on the line here. Let's see. Derrick, are you there?
I am here.
All right. Well, I'm glad to hear
I was a little confused. I thought you were going to call me. I was a little confused.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, the way this thing's set up, they make you call into us.
Okay.
Well, all right. Well, I want to thank you for being here. I've gotten a lot of response for this interview. A lot of people looking forward to it. A lot of people sending in questions to me to ask you.
Good.
So let's get right to it. The first question is, how did you get started in the business, and who trained you? Because I personally have heard like 3 different people. I've heard Larry Latham trained you. I've heard Don Bass trained you, and then most recently I've heard that Tony Myers trained you.
Wow.
So,
Well, let me set the record straight here. First of all, Tony Myers is the first guy who I met. I was working at Piggly Wiggly in Memphis, and I knew he wrestled on Memphis television. I'd seen him, on Memphis TV. So I asked him if he knew anybody had a school. He said, well, he had a school in Dixie, Arkansas, which is, who knows where that's at. Anyway, Dixie, Arkansas. And I went over there, my friend of mine named Jason, and I went over there for $25 a week. And we paid and trained with him. And then he took me to a show in Brighton, Tennessee with David Milliken. Then from there on, I got to meet Don Bass and train with him. I got to meet Moondog Spot and train with him, Bill Dundee and train with him, and also Jimmy Valiant and train with him. So I was kind of, Tony Myers is the one that broke me and that got me in, I guess, teach me bumps and so forth, but, everybody else kind of really helped me out, because I was wrestling by then.
So there was a little truth to it all then. All those guys had a hand.
Yeah, all those guys had a helping hand in Derrick King.
Okay. Who was your first match against? Do you have any memories of that?
My first match was in Independence, Mississippi. in front of 12 people, and I don't know who it was. I was just in a battle royal.
Mm-hmm.
I was just in a battle royal, and I was quickly eliminated.
So you started out working, I'm sure like everybody else, a lot of independent shows around that area. When did you get hooked up with Music City Wrestling? I'm thinking that's one of the first bigger promotions that you worked for, correct?
Music City came. Actually, I was working for AWA in Brighton with David Milliken, and Terry Golden was there, and he was going up to Music City himself, and he has Bert. I think he got hooked up between him and Bert for me to come up there and wrestle, because I rode with him every weekend, and we went up there and wrestled there. I only wrestled there, I think, a handful of times, and I could just remember it was with I was riding with Terry most of those times, so yeah, he's the one that helped me get in there.
Well, Bert Prentice is certainly a controversial figure in wrestling. The little bit you did get to work for him, what was your opinions and your take on Bert Prentice?
It never bothered me. He told me what to do, and that's what I did. He had me managing a team called Bad, Black, and Beautiful, and other than that, like I said, my team was in there wasn't very long, and so whatever, when I basically talked to Terry, he'd tell Terry, okay, this is what I want him to go do, and that's what I went and did, and I try to stay my best way out of the way of all the promoters or whatever, just so, you don't want to step on anybody's toes when you first get there.
Right.
I was told to shut up, and that's what I did.
So how did you first get hooked up with Power Pro?
Power Pro Wrestling, my favorite wrestling company. Power Pro. I was wrestling at the casinos, and I've been wrestling with Bill Dundee, and he introduced me to Jerry Lawler at the casinos while I was wrestling there. And Lawler happened to watch a match between myself and Bobby Bronze, Lance Jade, and Blade Boudreaux, and he really liked it. He said, you guys should give Randy Hales a call about Power Pro. He's about to start up in Memphis. And the next time we were booked at casinos, Randy was there. Randy had heard of me, I guess, from Bill Dundee, and the night I was supposed to be in Jonesboro wrestling, I had to be in Nashville wrestling for Bert. And so Randy came to Jonesboro to see me, and I wasn't even there. So then I had to, meet him again I had to meet him at the casino, and that's when, they had this idea, the Mr. Personalities. Him and Bill Dundee came up with the Mr. Personalities gimmick, and the rest is history, I guess.
Yeah, I was going to say that was actually one of my next questions, is how that gimmick came to be. Of course, the Mr. Personalities gimmick was, you came out as different characters. You were Jeff Jarrett, Shawn Michaels, Lawler.
And see, how it actually all started. Dundee had saw me wrestling in Brighton, and I came out as Shawn Michaels, and then the following week I came out as Moondog Spot. I had these Moondog pants and everything. So he knew that I had all the gimmicky stuff to wear. So, that's when they went through the different names, Mr. Personality, Mr. Personalities, multi-personalities, culture. It was crazy.
Who did you learn the most from in those early couple of years that you were first starting out? I know you worked a lot. When I seen you around that time, you were working a lot of matches with the guys you mentioned earlier, Lance J, Blade Boudreaux, Bobby Bronze, and all that. But of the veterans you worked, who do you think taught you the most?
Oh, it is so hard to say, because each individual guy had their own. It really is. They really had their own little way of teaching me everything. Dundee was big on psychology. Jimmy Vane was big on the entertainment and and the aspect of selling gimmicks. And I could remember riding rides with him, and he was always talking about, okay, we need to, sell those gimmicks. That's what you need to do. You need to sell gimmicks. And I was like, I've never sold a picture for my life. Who would buy a picture of Derrick King? But he made me sell pictures. And so, and then like working with Don Bass always, for a big guy, he taught me how to work with big guys. And it was, the big guy doesn't have to go down the first time. There were just so many different things, so many different guys who had, they all had their influence. Don Bass had one way of doing an arm drag. Bill Dundee had another way of doing an arm drag. So I adapted to both ways. So, it was easier for me because all I did was watch wrestling. And then, so when those guys, was to say do something, I would just try to absorb it as fast as I could. So I was like, all right, I'll do it this way. This way he wants it. This way he's going to get it. So.
Now, starting out, you're working Brighton, Tennessee. You're working Dyersburg, Corinth, Mississippi, and all the little indie shows of the time. And then you're on Power Pro, and now you're on TV every week. How much of a difference did that TV exposure make as far as your demand from promoters, the money you were getting paid in comparison, and that
a world of difference. The only difference is I refused to go anywhere but Power Pro. I mean, it was kind of like I didn't want anything to take away from me being on television. I wouldn't go to any shows. I know that some guys wanted me to come to Dyersburg, and I mean, there's other shows, and like very few shows, unless Power Pro said so, I didn't go, because I obviously, I wanted to be dedicated to Memphis wrestling. And Power Pro was, where I was going to be at. And so when guys called, I didn't go. I just said, I can't come, maybe another time. And like very few times I went to Corinth, but, it was with a Power Pro connection. It was with, always with a connection of that company. And I just, not to say that I was some kind of big shot or anything like that, just I didn't go because I just didn't want to jeopardize anything. It's kind of hard because when you first get on television and you don't know how to, react about a lot of things. And I didn't want to, I try to make this business as simple for me as I can. And I didn't want to make anybody upset, so I said, I'm just going to stay it, do what they do at Power Pro. And then if they say go, then I will go. If not, I just have, I'd have to wait.
For the guys that did go and do those other shows, did Randy ever say, look, if you go to these other shows, don't go down there and do a job. Don't go down there and put these guys over.
I've never heard Randy say that to anybody, or tell anybody they couldn't do that. I just think, my thought is, I think people have a big deal about winning and losing, but who cares? It's, somebody has to win, somebody has to lose. I think the thing was when those guys went, they knew that they weren't going to get themselves in that kind of trouble. Don't do anything that's going to affect what you're going to do on television.
Right.
And most of those guys didn't, so,
Now,
I know that Lance Jade, and Bobby Bruns went to a lot of shows, but they were well protected too. So
right. Now, one of your first big angles on TV there on Power Pro was with Jacqueline. What are your memories of that, and how did you like working with her?
A lot of fun. A lot of fun. It was I can remember them talking about bringing her. She was coming in, and I was thinking, oh God, because here I am, a guy who just really watched Memphis wrestling, all these years, and never really met all these guys. So here she comes. I'm thinking, okay, and they go, you're going to be working with her. And I'm excited. I'm thinking, because I'd worked with, like, Stacy, and I'd worked with Samantha, so I had already, worked with girls before. So when it came time to work with her, I was really excited. So, it was easy. It was fun. She, class act.
I've heard that in WCW, right?
Right.
She coming out of WCW then?
Yeah, she was just leaving WCW. But it was great. I mean, it never, I don't know. It was a lot of fun because we had, like, Brandon had a big, I'm sorry?
Was she real stiff? I know Jamie Dundee's made a lot of comments and she didn't that bitch beat me to death and stuff like that.
I would say not stiff. I would say just there. I mean, the clothesline was there. I'd say that. Well-placed clotheslines.
All right. And now you also worked in Ohio Valley with,
right.
This would be when Cornette was running it. How did you get hooked up with OVW?
Well, actually, Cornette was coming down and booking for Power Pro for a little bit, and I was already friends with Nick Dinsmore, and Nick was coming down with him. He goes, man, you should come up here, one night. And I was like, man, get me booked, I'll be there. Don't just tell me when. It didn't matter, I'll go. And so he talked to Cornette, and Cornette had already had in his mind that we were going to do the Suicide Blondes, because they took me off TV for like 3 weeks to get, my hair dyed and all that kind of stuff. So that next week I was in Louisville, and I was there for, a couple of years, on and off, just there. I was happy. It was the weirdest time, but it was fun. It was a lot of fun going up there, because I got to stay with Nick, and I knew somebody there. And I had went to Ohio Valley Wrestling when Danny was first starting it with Bill Dundee at first. And then, just going back, it was kind of, it was really neat.
Now, during the time you were there, you worked with a lot of these guys who went on to be big WWE superstars. I mean, Brock Lesnar and Randy Orton and Cena, Shelton Benjamin. At the time, did you see the potentials of these guys going on to become as big a stars as a lot of them did?
Well, at the time, I knew that they were under contract and they were going to, surely to make it somewhere. It's hard to tell because you don't never know if they're going to do with anybody. And I could have never just seen them just be John Cena as John Cena, but I mean, it worked, and and that's what should have worked. I think they all had great, like Shelton was great to work with, and Brock was easy to work with, and I mean, all those guys were. We were like what Jim Cornette called a human Super Bowl, and we just just took bumps for them. I mean, and you could see guys from Randy Orton, all those guys starting out, and now where they are today, they had potential, and and that's what they used, and that's what was good about it.
How instrumental do you think Cornette was in all that?
Oh, big time. Cornette, he lives the business. I mean, everything he said, he tells you how to talk, why to talk like this, what you're supposed to be angry at, why you're supposed, the things that people forget to do, he tells you, and that's what, it's the little things, and I tell a lot of guys, it's the little things that often make, you the star instead of, the big things. The big things don't matter.
Well, I think it's something to be said for the fact that OVW was so successful for so long, and then now that he's been gone, here they are. There's all these rumors on the internet that they're going under and they're going to lose their developmental deal and all that. And I don't think that's coincidental.
That's a weird, that's one of those weird situations. I don't know, because wrestling's so different from what it used to be. It's not like they want a different, not to say they want a different product, but that's what kind of what they're. It's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, pretty much. Now going back to Power Pro, how bad was the heat between KEW and Power Pro at the time? Was KEW was running downtown at the New Daisy, and of course they were in the style of ECW, who at the time was taking shots at WWE and WCW. They were taking shots at Memphis constantly and doing their little shoots on Lawler and Dundee. How personal was all that taken over in your camp?
I really don't think anybody in Power Pro really gave it much merit. Really, nobody really put it over. So it's like Brandon and I occasionally watched the show and knew what was going on in the show. But other than that, I don't think nobody really, I know Bill may have said something, they did the thing where he, a midget or something like that. But Bill ended up going over there. So, it's like one of those things in the wrestling business, if it draws money, it doesn't matter, I guess. So, I don't think anybody really felt that it was a big threat because being on Channel 5. Channel 5 was a wider station and can go more places, and they were only on, on UPN, I think, UPN at the time. And so I don't think, they really would worry about it at all.
Was there any tension when it finally merged and those guys came over, from Memphis Championship and it all became one thing? And I know some guys who had been in Power Pro had, lost their spots in that deal. And how was that? Well,
see, take for example, you had when MCW came, you had 7. Or Kevin Thorne, who came from Power Pro, then went over there, and I think a lot of people felt like, well, why is he going? Why is he? Because I got in trouble for doing the exact same thing. I left Power Pro to go to MCW because obviously there was a WWE opportunity, but I ended up coming back to Power Pro because Cornette called me and made me come back to Power Pro. He goes, if you quit Power Pro, then you quit working for OVW, and I was like, well, I can't do that. I don't want to really quit on Randy, so that's one hard lesson I learned in the wrestling business. You have to give somebody the 2 weeks notice if you're quitting. It's like it's a regular job. And so when Seven did that, and he came back, but he came back and he worked right with me. It didn't really matter. I guess kind of some people felt animosity towards it, but at the end of the day, it don't really matter. And I guess it kind of the guys just said, okay, well, it either help or don't help.
Right.
He wasn't there long after that, so.
Another Power Pro question, which I guess doesn't exactly relate to you, but I'd like to hear somebody's perspective who was there. What was your take on the infamous Doug Gilbert, Tommy Rich, Brian Christopher Spellbinder shoot incident on TV this morning?
Well, I've YouTubed it so many times. Actually, I think I actually have a copy of it. That was a weird day. I would tell you that I never realized how many people have control or who don't have control or what's going on. Randy wanted Shock TV, and, you know, at this time, Brandon Baxter's, you know, his right-hand man, helping write the show, and then C.B. Wide was there even as my manager, but he was there in, like, the control room area, too. So it was one of those kind of weird things, because after Doug started ranting and raving about certain things, then all of a sudden when he said what he said, and I mean, the shock over everybody's face, I mean, it was, I don't know, I could just tell you how I felt. I was like, are they really seriously doing this? Is this really seriously happening? And then I could just remember Lawler coming to TV after the show was over, and I mean, he wasn't happy.
So that is true, because I was at a show that night in Mississippi, and Reggie B was there, and he was like, yeah, man, Lawler showed up at the studio, and he was pissed and everything. We didn't know if he was working us or what.
No, I mean, those are strong words and strong allegations. You know, you can't say some of the things. You know what I'm saying? I don't know why.
Yeah.
But Lawler came there, and I think he requested the tape of it, and because it was becoming a big mess right then. That's when it started becoming a huge mess on what was going to happen and what didn't happen and why did it happen. So it panned out. I mean, it was weird. It was a weird time. That was a very weird time because I've never seen Corey Macklin so upset in my entire life. I mean, because he was screaming like, "What are they saying? You can't say this. You know, blah 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 blah." And I was like, "Right, they can't say that."
What happened when Doug came through the curtain after that? I mean,
yeah, that right when Doug came through the curtain, we went straight to commercial. And here comes Corey. I can just hear him down the hall because at Channel 5 we had the hallway with the tapes are at, and he is screaming, "Doug, what are you thinking? What are you saying out there?" Dave Brown had to stayed out for a little bit, but then and then Doug just kept on walking. I think he ended up leaving right after that because Lawler came looking for him. Now whether there's gonna be a confrontation, I doubt it. But I mean, I'm just saying he came looking, and I was like, well, something about that happened.
That was a crazy story. I've never really heard the story from anyone who was actually there, so that's definitely interesting to hear.
I can remember when he walked in and everybody's in the dressing room. I can remember Slick Robbie D's in there, and I'm in there, and Brandon's in there, and Lawler walks through the door, and everybody just hushes. I was like, nobody say a word, because you just don't want to be on the bad end of any of that. So we let them hash that out themselves.
So where did the downfall of Power Pro start, do you think?
To me, and this is I kind of biased towards Power Pro because Power Pro would help Derrick King launch his whole career, I guess you'd say. I don't think because we were having fun and we were doing stuff and everything was going right. I just think, when it came time to negotiate whatever they were negotiating about TV time and all that kind of stuff, I don't know if Randy ever thought it would really be over, you know what I mean, or like it would really come to that. I thought that he knew he had Dave Brown behind him no matter what. So I think that was, I think Randy was more in thinking that Dave was going to, no matter what, we had somebody backing us in the studio, so we'll be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And which turned out, I guess, not, because here we are now on Channel 5.
And so when Power Pro shut down, Randy just pretty much left the business, didn't he?
Right. Randy was very upset. I can remember Randy calling me that morning before TV. He goes, "This is the last TV. It's the last one." I was like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "Oh, this is it." And so I get the TV, and he goes, "Y'all do what you want to do. Respectively, win, lose, how everyone do." So the guys kind of came together because we knew it was our last show, and just did whatever made the show make sense. They had a guideline of what we were doing or who we were working. It didn't matter who won or didn't. None of that. Nothing would matter then. And I remember after the show, I drove home, and I called him. I said, "Hey, man, you going to be all right?" He's like, "Yeah." He's like, then I was like, what are you going to do with the Power Pro desk? Because now we had memories. Now it was like, what are you going to do with the mic flags? What are you going to do with all this stuff, It was weird. It was a bad time because Randy just felt like it was just over. He said, forget it. And it's hard when I know it for him, and I've had companies do this, myself, that when it's gone, it's never really, you don't want it to be gone because you live for that moment. And Randy's life has been wrestling. I mean, he went to bat for wrestling, and he made it work. And I just felt bad. I really felt bad for him when it was over.
Well, I just kept waiting for him to show back up, because everybody, they all have the day when they walk away from it, they've had enough. But most everybody eventually, they come back around, they and reappear. Power Pro would be back, or some other wrestling in Memphis would be back. But he's pretty much
he stuck to his guns. He said he was done with it, and he's done with it. I talked to him a few years back. I used to call him like Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I just, I hadn't talked to him in a few years now, but it's just so weird because he was so instrumental in my career. I mean, I just, it's so weird to not know that he's not in the wrestling business anymore, because he gave so much to it.
Yeah, I mean, he was around Memphis for years, long before he ever
owned anything.
I mean,
right?
They did everything from selling programs and right up to, his days as, matchmaker or whatever his title was on TV when he'd walk out there. But
right, he worked. I mean, he literally worked his way there. I mean, and I know a lot of people get hot about it, but the Jamie Dundee and the PG-13 and Doug and Tommy Angle and the Smoky Mountain Angle, all of Randy's angles, and they were great. I mean, they held Memphis wrestling together. That's the first time like real small guys like PG-13 was getting pushed to the moon, and they were drawing, and it was good. Because I can remember going to the show going, man, these guys are going, this is good stuff.
It was. It was, and it was something different. It was something besides Lawler, Dundee, the guys that were always the go-to in the past. To see somebody else on top was, and drawing was
right.
Quite a feat. So after Power Pro folded, there was 2 or 3 attempts to come back, and they taped in the casino and a couple of different things. Who was behind that? Where did you work?
Right. So
who was behind those?
Yeah, here's the end of my OVW stuff here. As we were taping the casinos, because we were taping them in Samstown, and so I was working for Lawler here. I was doubling back. I was driving to Louisville, then coming back and working for Memphis at the same time. So I was just driving back and forth. And so I told Cornette, I said, this is what this is what they're going to be paying me to come. He goes, well, you stay here in Memphis because they're going to pay you a lot more money than, because I wanted to just go for the experience, and, hopefully one day land in the deal. And and Cornette and them took care of me, because I worked with all those guys, me and Jason, they took care of us fine until Jason went and did the WCW Cruiserweight Tag Team thing, which kind of, because here we were working for WWE developmental, and he goes to WCW.
Right.
And they were none too happy about that, so the tag team kind of fizzled out after that. So I think I went and did a couple more singles matches, and then Cornette said, well, it'll be better if you just stay, if you want to come up, you can come up, but if, you can be in Memphis, you can make money because you're at the casinos. I was like, well, that's true. So I came back to the casino, Lawler was running the casino, and then, that only lasted, so I don't even know how long that lasted, to tell you the truth. It don't seem like it lasted very long. I do remember it, yeah.
It would pop up, and there would be a few months worth of shows, and then it would disappear again, and then another. I think there were a couple of different.
Right, because I can remember right after the casino thing was done, they were showing tapes, and then we went to a thing where they were gonna. They started taping in our building in Dyersburg, because Mo and I were running Dyersburg, and of course, just trying to keep Memphis wrestling going. They asked if they could do the TV there, and they taped the TV there on Wednesday nights, and we still ran a show on Saturday.
Right.
So I mean, it was they still had a time slot on Channel 5, so they can just tape in Memphis. Tape in Dyersburg, then play it on Memphis TV. So we were trying everything at that time.
Because the deal was they just couldn't shoot in the studio, but they still had
right, because the studio came with all kind of insurance, and then you had to have the fire doors had to be opened in a different way. The curtains were fire. It was so much stuff. It was just you felt like you were getting booted out, but you knew they had to live up to the code too.
Right. Now, this may be jumping ahead a little. I'm not, because my time frames are awful. But you said something a while ago about hanging around OVW in hopes of maybe getting a developmental deal or something like that. But now, from what I understand, you've got, you're on pretty good terms with WWE You've done several dark matches for them. You did SmackDown just recently. One of the dark matches you did on one of the, I think it was before Raw. You worked Taz one night.
Uh-huh.
How was that?
That was my very first. That was the very first time I ever went there, and I was nervous as all get out. I can remember thinking, "Oh my God, my hometown of Memphis, and here I am at a WWE show." I'm thinking, "This is crazy." And everybody was really nice, and they were like, "Okay, this is what you're gonna be doing." I said, "Okay." I did what I got out there, listened to Taz, and I know when people say, you're sitting in that ring and you hear the pyro go off. I was really like in that moment, like the pyro went off. I was like, "Oh my God, we are really here,"
Right.
And the match, was fine for me. I got my butt kicked, but who cared? I was there. I was, on the show, and they said thank you afterwards, and I said thank you, and I went on my way. And just in hopes of, somebody saying, "Well, I know him," or, I remember him from being here or whatever. But so I guess that's most of the time what wrestling really is. It's like trying to get a CEO job. You're just trying to make sure you're there and do your job and get out of there.
I can only imagine. I mean, it's got to be a great feeling to go from, working in the Piggly Wiggly in Memphis, trying to find a wrestling school, and then there you are standing in a WWE ring in front of your home, in your hometown.
Right, and it was weird. I mean, it was one of those kind of things. I was like, wow, I'm really here. Even if I was there for 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, or whatever it was, but I was there, and it was one of those moments. I was like, man, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be at.
But like I said, from what I hear, you've got pretty good connections with WWE. You can call them up right now and be on a show tomorrow working dark matches and that sort of thing.
I don't know if it's that easy, but I mean, I've been lucky. I can say I have friends that work there, but I often say this, and I do this. I tell everybody, they go, "Man, you got you're friends with Cena, you're friends with Orton, you're friends." Yeah, and yes and no. This is a business. I would never want them to put their neck on the line, so to speak. All right, give him a job. But like whenever they're in town, I do try to give Nick a call, or when he was there, and then I try to get in touch with Orton if they ever need anything. Whenever they need anything, I try. If they call about wrestling, I don't care. I'll be there wherever they need me to be at.
What do you think it would take to get you that opportunity to get you a developmental deal with WWE?
Honestly, I don't know. I know most people would say, right off the bat is my size. But, then I'm thinking, well, this is a business that you can make any. I mean, we've proven that we can make size work, and my size work in Memphis wrestling or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know. I mean, I don't know what they're looking for. And it's hard to say what they're looking for because I'm not there. Because you don't really know what they're looking for until they tell you.
Well, because you see some of the guys who end up with developmental deals, and you're scratching your head, just like, well, what are they thinking? I mean, there's guys like you and others there in Memphis who I would think would be much more deserving and are much more talented, but yet these guys are getting a shot, and then they sit in developmental for a year or two over there in OVW or now down in Florida and what was Deep South. And they have them for a year or two under these contracts and pay them, and then they realize, oh, wait a minute, no, this guy doesn't have it, and then they cut them loose. And that kind of stuff
think
blows my mind.
And here's what I've figured this out. I mean, I try to figure this out. When it comes to stuff like that, because I can never, even like when me booking a show, I don't necessarily know who I'm going to hire and why I'm going to book them and why I'm not going to book them. And I know when you see somebody for the first time, it's like, wow, this guy's going to be great, or this guy's going to be this. And if it doesn't pan out, it's hard to say because, you see people first. You don't know what they can do until after they get in the ring. And so, like, when you see people that, look amazing or look, phenomenal or whatever, you're going to go to those guys. And, that, you can't fault them because that's what the company is. That's what wrestling is. But you also got to, when you're sitting there, you're working hard and trying to get there, you wonder a lot of times, like, man, what do I have to do? What do I have to do? It's like there's a million guys that can do the same job that I'm doing, So it's just being unique and different. That's the way I look at it. You have to do something that, stand out that they'll know and remember you by. That's the only thing I can, here I am still without a job, but that's the only thing I can tell, myself is like, hey, just do what I'm supposed to do. I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm going by the book of what they tell you to do. So hopefully that pays off.
this is jumping ahead again, but I think this is a good opportunity to ask this question. Talking about, they've seen Derrick King and whatnot. What did you think when Shelton Benjamin come out with bleached hair, looking very reminiscent of Derrick King, to the point that a few people, I don't know whether jokingly or seriously, sent out reports that Derrick King was on Raw,
Right. It's funny because I was at the pay-per-view in Memphis, their last pay-per-view in Memphis when Undertaker returned. And the first person I ran into was Shelton. And he goes, "Oh, man," he goes, "how much money do I owe you?" I mean, because he knew I had blonde hair long before, him or whatever. And he goes, "How much I owe you?" I go, "Oh, nothing," just joking around. And everybody back there was like, "Who had it first?" Like the Undertaker came to us and said, "Who had it first?" And Shelton said, "He had it first." And, which is fine, but I mean, it didn't bother me at all. I mean, to me, it's like, hey, this guy, he's got a job,
Yeah.
And so, that's what does. It's like anybody bleaches their hair. That's like a white guy bleaching their hair blonde. Ric Flair had his hair blonde, so I mean, there's a lot of other guys that have their hair blonde too. I don't, look at it as like he was. I guess most people think I'd look at it like he was trying to steal my gimmick or anything like that, but I don't think it like that at all.
All right.
I know most people are like, aren't you supposed to be mad about that? Aren't you? I don't know. No, that's what you're supposed to do.
Well, no. It's funny because, I worked around there all that time as War Machine for all that time. And then when Rhino showed up on TNA as War Machine, I got all these emails and calls. Like, I bet you're pissed that he's calling Rhino War Machine. I'm like, what do I care? I don't even work anymore. And I'm some jabroni from, Mississippi, and I stole it from Ray Traylor using it in the War Games in '87, I mean.
It's like,
how you gonna get
something's
mad?
always going to be copied in this wrestling business, no matter what.
That's right. Well, I know a lot of the people sitting here listening are waiting for this line of questioning. It's what a lot of people tune in for, so let's get right to it. Corey Macklin's Memphis Wrestling is what finally took the place of Power Pro. A lot of people are critical of Corey and the way he runs Memphis Wrestling, the way he books Memphis Wrestling. What are some of the trials and tribulations of working for Corey Macklin's Memphis Wrestling?
All right, here's Derrick King's. Here's my take and my take only on how I think. I think Corey is a very lucky guy to have in his possession Memphis Wrestling on in Memphis, Tennessee, because that's the only place you can have Memphis Wrestling. That's the only place that has live wrestling, or not even live wrestling, wrestling in Memphis at all around here, because you can't get another TV station. My drawback is that most of the guys don't really know what's going on, and you get a sense that nobody knows what's going on because you're sitting like running around going, "What are we doing? Who's here? Who's not here?" And Corey's not a wrestler, so it's hard for him to also know what to do because he knows angles, but he knows the finished part of the angle. And so, but we have to build for because all we do is building for TV. We're not really building for a house show or anything like that. I know people want to hear me knock, but here's the thing. The truth is, the guy is the boss. He tells us what to do, and all we can do is offer our help and say, "Hey, man, this is what I think." Because my idea is, I said, "Listen, you guys are busy. You and Lawler are busy. Let me book the show, and help out, And so, I mean, I've gotten to help out a little bit more lately now anyway, but, I mean, it's just because all I'm doing is sitting here doing nothing but wrestling. And I think that Corey has I'm trying to say this, he has friends in his business, and he's trying to, he has to make sure he gets, he's got to make sure that Corey Macklin stuff is pushed, and you got to make sure this stuff is pushed, you got to make sure that stuff, because I know Johnny Dodson and I get an argument about it every week about, what's going to happen on Memphis Wrestling, why is it going to happen this way, or because I'm all about the wrestling, he's more about the advertising. And so, I mean, I think that Corey has a nice way of saying it. I mean, I wish he had somebody else to help him, some more people to help out with him on Memphis Wrestling. It's just that, I know that some of the stuff that everybody says, that's horrible, or he's wrestling in the main event with Coco or whatever, or whomever he's working with. The point is, he's the boss. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's kind of, in a weird way, it sucks, but in a weird way, what else would you do?
Does it bother you though? Like, for instance, Brian was talking about on a show I did a couple weeks ago before the Thanksgiving Throwdown shows, and due to some timing or whatever, he wasn't able to throw on the DVD and air the commercial to promote y'all's shows over there. You know, with all these guys coming to TV for free, and he's not really promoting any live shows much to speak of. Why would he not just throw that on and at least let you guys take advantage of the opportunity to advertise on that television? I mean, is that not frustrating?
That is the $1,000,000 question, and that is the most frustrating question. Because I mean, we worked hard. You know, I'm not saying I'm the only one that worked on it, but I mean, I worked hard for 4 days trying to make all that stuff come together, and then basically they didn't have to do anything. Corey didn't have to do nothing but just say something about the show. And they would have made it, Memphis Wrestling would have been running shows. I run a show every week, you know, and I'm say, hey man, just put it on the show as advertising, you know, and I book all the guys anyway. Everybody who works on Memphis Wrestling pretty much works for me every now and then. Like Kevin's there every so often, Too Cool Two's there, you know, the list goes on from Tattoo to Chris Lex. I mean, all those guys. Reggie's been there, Brian's been there, Lawler's been there. I mean, Lawler was even headlining on the show, the Thanksgiving Throwdown.
Right.
And you know, and I was very, and I talked to BT and I said, man, I mean, I was upset about it, you know, because you know, at least we could have got some kind of feedback or something. Could we say something about the show? I mean, you put the show together, we can write the angle. I mean, we can say an interview about this is what led to my whole thing about Johnny Dodson. I got into a big argument about Johnny Dodson went out there and talked about an interview about him selling, you know, him wearing nice suits. Well, we could have plugged the show for that whole 4 days. Mm-hmm. Instead of talking about a suit, because he goes out there right after I lose the junior heavyweight belt that he's been chasing for a year and said, don't worry about the belt. You got to dress like a champion. I said, man, dude, I was just a champion. Dressing like a champion. And then, you know, we could have plugged the shows. But he plugged some clothing line that, you know, that's not going to make a difference to anybody else on the show. It doesn't help the wrestling business. It doesn't help what we're going to do in wrestling. It doesn't elevate the wrestling program at all. It just makes wrestling sit right there, and then we're talking about something else around wrestling. If it wasn't for wrestling, we wouldn't be talking about it in the first place.
That's another question I have, and you may not know the answer to this. Nobody may not know the answer to this, but growing up watching wrestling, I mean, the point of I know it's changed now, and as far as the cable networks and all that go, their reasoning. But back in the day, the only reason you had wrestling on TV was to promote the live events and to get people out to the live events.
Right.
Corey really doesn't run any live events. He doesn't help promote any of you guys' outside projects, live events, as we were just talking about. What's the purpose of that TV show? What is his goal? Because he obviously doesn't put a lot of effort and thought into booking the matches or the angles. I mean, like you say, everything's kind of thrown together, and it's real obvious to anybody that watches it, even the most basic fan. So if we're not really building towards the live show and we're not really worried about what we're putting out there on TV, I mean, is it just so he can have his mug out there on TV or advertise the things that he does get the chance to advertise? Or
that I don't know, but I don't know why. But I tell you why I'm there, and I tell you why I can speak. I really don't speak for some of these guys. I mean, because basically you want to be on television. You know, you have to be on TV. I mean, I know I have to be on TV to maintain a wrestling persona around. You know, so you know you take TV for what it's worth and get the best out of it. You know, that's the reason I always go, man, well, let's go out here and we'll do something. You know, let's do, you right. Try to basically, I'm going to say steal the show, but you try to be the show. You know, you try to make sure your part was good, because they can never say, well, you sucked on the show, or you did this, or you did that. Well, this is what, you know, they can say, well, that was good what you did there. You know, I liked your angle here, or whatever. Just do what I'm told to do. And, you know, and I just do it to the best of my ability. And that's what anybody like, who I'm working with, you know, I'm like, come on, let's just do it, you know, get it over with, it don't matter. Because the guys, you know, all the guys are kind of marked for being on TV anyway.
Yeah, because I understand that from the guys' perspective, because all the guys, I mean, your aim when you get into business, you want to get your face on TV, and you want to get as much TV time as you can, but that's the purpose of that is to help you get more bookings, help you get better bookings, help you move up the ladder in the business. But that's why I understand where Corey's coming from. It's like, well, why are you out there, just to be the local celebrity, or just because you want to be on TV, or what? I don't know, man. I know he's the boss, and he don't really owe anybody an explanation. He can do what he wants. But personally, I think with I'm sure you're like me and a lot of people listening to the show. You grew up watching Memphis wrestling, and the legacy of it means a lot to you because a lot of great things have happened. And I think if you're going to use the name Memphis Wrestling and you're going to attach yourself to the legacy of Memphis Wrestling, you owe people a little more than what he's given.
I understood that completely. I think that running shows are hard. A lot of people don't. We just think he hadn't had time to get it. We don't have a building. Because here it is. You're in Memphis Wrestling, but we can't run in Memphis. There's no place to run in Memphis, and it sucks because you really want to run in Memphis. And I mean, with all due respect to everybody who's involved, it's hard for everybody, and everybody's trying to everybody's looking out for themselves, also looking, and making sure they need to be where they are, because nobody's going to jeopardize what they're going to do on television. I guarantee you that.
Talking about Memphis Wrestling, of course, the biggest thing out of, or I guess two biggest things out of Memphis Wrestling, they had the big FedEx Forum show with, Lawler and Hogan originally supposed to be on top. They went on TV and they promoted that for weeks, and of course Lawler had to pull out and all that. How bad do you think that hurt Corey and his business there with the match changing at the last minute?
I'm sure it has some effect because here it is. This is Memphis. Jerry Lawler is the king of Memphis wrestling, and and the diehard fan would want to see Lawler against Hulk Hogan. So when you change it, you kind of put Hogan against the Big Show, not taking anything away from because Hulk Hogan is obviously the biggest legend in this business. When you put Hogan and Giant against each other, or Paul White against each other, it's like a WWE show, or it's like a different show. It's not a Memphis show.
Right.
Because you took out the main key of Memphis, and the main key of Memphis is Jerry Lawler. And it's hard, and I think, I don't think business-wise, I said business-wise it probably hurt because, I don't know how much it drew. I didn't go to the show. I don't know what it drew or not. But, for having Hulk Hogan against Lawler would have been great because, I think it would have packed out, seriously.
And why weren't you on that show?
There are so many different reasons who wasn't on the show and why did nobody get, why everybody wasn't. They just said they didn't need any extra body. I've heard that Hogan didn't want any Memphis guys. I heard everything. But Too Cool 2 was on the show, so they're Memphis guys, so it's hard to say why everybody wasn't on the show. But it didn't matter. I was booked that Friday night anyway, so
yeah.
It was crazy, so I don't know why it happened like that.
Because it just seemed odd because, they're using all this time on Memphis TV to promote a show. And again, okay, you got all these guys working TV for Corey for free. He won't take 2 minutes to promote their shows. But now you got Hulk, and I know it's more, it's money and all that, but it just seemed kind of insulting that now you're going to use all this TV time to push Hulk Hogan's show, but he don't want any Memphis guys on there who are working the TV show, who's promoting the show that he's doing. I don't know. It is
right. A lot of guys were very upset about that because they felt like, hey, we're here every week, we're doing this, we're trying to make this work, we're doing everything they're asking or whatever, and yeah, of course, it sucks, but And that way, sometimes you go with name value, or you go with, what's going to draw you that. And I don't know. I get loyalty is one thing, but now you're sitting there looking at, wow, the Hogan thing didn't really pan out the way we wanted it to. Now the other guys, he kind of needs the other guys sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Now speaking of Lawler and that show, I guess another thing that come indirectly out of that show because that's how he ended up on the show. What's your take on the Jerry Lawler Sal Corrente ordeal?
Oh gosh, Sal's always been nice to me. This is the wrestling business. If you're gonna get hit, I've been punched by Lawler 100 times, seriously, and I've been punched by Bill Dundee 200 times, and I'm gonna tell you, Dundee has probably knocked me out. But that's part of it to me. That you can't complain about, getting hit hard. I just think that who's going to believe you? Like, what are they going to say? Well, this guy, aren't you supposed to hit somebody hard? That's what I would be thinking.
I thought it was all very ridiculous. And, of course, spent a lot of time on the site pushing exactly how ridiculous we thought it was. Although he does write for the site now, but yeah, it was just completely ludicrous. But it got Memphis a lot of airtime on the news, and different things.
Exactly. And see, like I was saying, I know Sal's always been straight up with me, but to me, it's just like it's wrestling. People have gotten their jaws broke, arms broken, legs broken. A lot of things happen, so you can't really just say, well, he punched me, blah, 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 and then I'm now mad at him.
Right.
Because, it's just, who's going to believe it?
Back to what you said earlier, if you did get that call, if Corey called you today and said, you know what, Derrick, you're right, I'm turning this over to you, I want you to book it, I want you to run it how you see fit, do you think there's enough towns like the towns you guys run over there, enough towns that you could put together somewhat of a little, a loop like they used to run back in the day? That
has been like my ultimate goal for so long, because I have seriously right now in Ripley about 33 guys working for me, and so we're going to split the crew on our show and run another place on Saturday nights. Because it'd be so much easier to run, and everybody can make a little bit of money and work more. And that's that's my ultimate goal is, and hopefully to have a loop. Because I know I've talked to Brandon Baxter a couple times, and he's all like, man, we need to get something going. Everybody's wanting to get something going, and you got all these guys ready to get something going. Why not?
Yeah, they should. Because if you could get it together on that end, get you a loop, get you some towns that draw. And then tie it in with that, take advantage of that TV slot. Even if you're not going to run Memphis, everybody gets that station in those areas.
Right.
Tie that TV in to help those towns draw. There's still an opportunity for, to make something useful out of that television.
Right. And that's, because that's what everybody's saying. That's the reason, I guess I'm the guy that they're waiting to head it all sometimes because, most of the guys are waiting on me. Go, are you going to say something? Are you going to say something? And it's like, well, I'll say something, but I don't know. I still can only do what they tell me to. And I have to practice what I preach. I tell every guy, you have to listen to what they say. If they don't want you to do it, then you can't do it because they are giving you the form to do it or don't do it.
Right.
And you have to be very respectful in that, and you cannot say, oh, I'm doing what I want to do because it doesn't work that way. It's so much easier to have everybody's help and to get along and just do it, and I know it never happens that way, but you can make it, you don't have to like somebody to work with them. And I think that's another big problem sometimes with wrestling gets, I don't like him. Well, who cares? Go to work.
That's a perfect segue into my next question because I didn't necessarily intend on asking it, but I had 3 different people email me wanting it asked, so I guess we might as well. Last year on some little radio show like this, the Spellbinder was on there, and he was shooting his mouth off about a number of guys, but you being one of the main ones. And he made some negative comments and said you were gay and that everybody knows it in the business and just a lot of...
I had a dollar for every time I heard that.
A lot of unnecessary stuff. And I know Brian covered it on the site. I don't know how much of the coverage it got around. Cause, he made some comments about Lawler and some different people that made it around to some websites. Did he ever apologize for any of that, or
No, but here's the thing. He's always said it. He said it to my face. He goes, man, he'll call me whatever he wants to call me. I don't care. See but here's the difference. They're gonna say what people are gonna say. They want to say about you anyway. No matter what. If that's what he wants to say, then fine. Because, like I just said earlier, I don't have to like anybody necessarily, and I do like Spellbinder. He and I get along very well. And whenever he needs anything, or whenever I need any help, he'll call me or I'll call him. What he says, that's how he feels it, because he would tell me that. He would tell me that to my face. And it's not like I've never heard that before. And I don't really care, because people are going to say what they want to say. And, if I went and cried about it every time somebody felt bad about it,
yeah,
I'd be just sitting in the corner right now crying now. But, he and I have known him, for a long time, so stuff like that don't matter to me. I know everybody likes to read into, make it, like, oh, he said this much. So what? It is no big deal to me. And I know it sounds, a way out of that question, but that's the truth. The truth is, I didn't care, because people still say it today. Some people say it right now, and it's so weird because here I am just going to vent here for a second. So many guys, like so many different places, have a problem like some guys in Mississippi or some guys over here. If Derrick King's on the show, oh no, we can't have Derrick King over here because he's going to do this, he's going to do that. And I said, and then they call all the guys who work for me gay and all this. I said, the point is, we run a weekly show that draws and we wrestle. We don't care about nothing else but our personal lives or what anybody thinks about our personal lives. Nobody cares. And, and that's why everybody gets so wrapped up in the wrong reason why they're wrestling. Because
right.
I'm wrestling because I like everybody here. Well, if you liked everybody there, then when is it going to go wrong? When is the honeymoon over?
Right.
So, I just don't, to me, people are going to say, people knock or say or whatever they want to say anyway.
Well, the wrestling business is very much like a bunch of old women as far as talking about people behind their back and spreading rumors and, some
that's what we live for.
Your very best friends will spread that shit around, and it's unfortunate. But I learned early that's definitely part of the business,
Because everybody wants basically to be over. Everybody, this guy, blah, 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 bury him, but then when he's with them, oh, man, you're the greatest. It's the greatest thing ever, blah, blah. It's phony, folks. We know that you're not telling me the truth when somebody. I've seen guys seriously literally kiss up to me at one time and then knock me to high heaven to other people.
Oh, yeah.
And I go, oh, well, I'm saying, and sad thing about it is I'll still book them. I'll put them on the show because it's wrestling. They ain't got to like me. The point is now they work for me, So now it's like, okay, I can't knock him for that. So, now what are they going to knock me for?
All right. Well, that's glad to hear your take on that. Because, like I say, that 3 people emailed me like, ask him about this. I was like, okay, well, all right. But
I think a lot of people are probably going, is he or is he not? That's the biggest. I swear, since I've been in the wrestling business, that's been the biggest debate. I go, more people worry about who am I sleeping with than anything. I go, might as well write a soap opera on me.
Pretty much, yeah, because, that's always been a point of speculation with all kinds of people. So.
Wow. Simple minds sometimes, I often think. I go, if that's all they're thinking about, here I am worried about, are we going to have a show this week? Are we wrestling or something? There, oh well.
So right now you're involved with TLCW.
Right.
This Saturday night, y'all got the show in Ripley. Got Nick Dinsmore, your buddy, coming in, Eugene.
Right.
I was told there's an interesting story behind the name TLCW, what it stands for, and how it come about.
Actually, I think it stands for Timmy Cummins. He owns the thing, and his son was killed, got hit by a car or something, and they just named it after him. His name is Timothy Lane Cummings, I think, and then they just put wrestling at the end. I know a lot of people, we've made jokes about call it Timber Lumbers and Chains, or Tables, Eyes, and Chairs, or Tender Love and Care. It's been every, TLCW name, or every TLC name. So, but basically we just leave it TLCW and never really mention why, because here's one thing. I don't really like the point of the family stuff being, I hate, kind of personal angles like that, because the kid did get killed, so you don't kind of want to bring it up, so we don't ever say anything about it. We just call it TLCW and just leave it at that. A lot of people inquire, why? I just say, that's what they want to call it.
And there's so many initials floating around out there anyway. What does it really matter?
Right, exactly. I go, and because no matter what initials it's just still wrestling. Just come to it, Just,
it's Derrick show. Oh, okay.
Yeah. Right. Just come up there, check it out. Don't the letters, have a meaning to to a few people, but the other part of it is just
I love that when people you go on their MySpace or whatever and they'll say promotions I work for, and there's 900 acronyms there,
and they'll name them all, and I go, I don't even remember all.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
All right, so now we're going to get to the portion of the interview, the word association, which is always a popular part of interviews, but not necessarily the one word that comes to mind, but the first thing that pops in your mind when I mention these names. And there's quite a list, so we'll try to get through them here. But the first name on the list is Brandon Baxter.
Great performer, good friend of mine, and dedicated, very dedicated. He knows this business, and to see him do an interview and to talk, because he gets into, he wants you to get into it, and I like that, and we can sit and talk about wrestling and drink a couple beers and talk about wrestling all night long, which is great. Somebody can always talk to about wrestling.
It's funny because I saw Brandon, as a lot of people did, at first as a pimply-faced teenager on Global Wrestling.
Right, it's in there, yeah.
Back in the day, and we over where I lived, we lost Memphis TV. We lost TV5 for years, and so it wasn't until I went to college and got USWA, and there he is, the bald manager on USWA, and to see how far he had come and how great he was at promos and everything was just
he's
amazing.
very. I mean, it's so weird because he just knows it, right? I always have a problem with interviews, and he's just like, just go in there and say it like you. I was like, okay,
But yeah, he's tremendous. Tattoo.
My favorite cruiserweight of all time. He ego, yes, I will definitely say that. And I would have to say I contributed most of that, but high flying, he definitely knows, and just he needs to know why and when he's doing it. And other than that, he's good. I can't deny he's athletic. He's like one of my closest friends. I hang out with him almost every day or every other day or something like that. So I mean, he's good. That's all I can say. He's really good. He's athletic, and he just needs to know when and why and where to put it at.
A guy who recently resurfaced there in Memphis, Ali Stevens.
Ali. I like Ali. I think Ali, when he first came back to Memphis Wrestling, he wanted just to be strong and be, quite over. Because I know the Power Pro, they had him over big time. Big time as a babyface. And I just think he came in with that same intention, but it was with, like some of the, some guys, you got to sell for this guy, you got to sell for that guy, But I mean, he's a good guy. He's never done nothing wrong to me, and always been straight up with me. Matter of fact, he asked me to come work with him somewhere in Illinois somewhere. So I think I'm going up there to work with him. So I mean, he's always been nice to me. Never had anything bad to say about him.
Dustin Starr.
Mr. 5-star himself. Dustin Starr, egomaniac. But one of my closest friends. See, you're going to hear closest friend a lot because most of these guys I've known since they started the wrestling business, and I've been with them since day one. Dustin, egomaniac, loves his character, loves his gimmick. I think he needs to be a heel wherever he works at. He loves his business. He wants it to be right. He rubs some people the wrong way. He and I get in arguments all the time. We fight like cats and dogs. But at the end result, it's about wrestling. We both have that respect for each other, and Dustin, no problem, hands down. One of the easiest guys for me to work with too. So the only thing about it, his ego will he lets his mouth go a little bit too far, and I go, you can't do that. He goes, I don't care. I go, you can't do that. I can hear us now in the back of the building just screaming at each other. But end of the day, it's over.
This is one of those guys that we mentioned earlier who was under a developmental deal for a long time there in OVW, and then they just never did anything with him. But I know he's a friend of yours and is working with you now. Flash Flanagan.
Flash Flanagan. I can remember watching Flash. He used to be in the front row watching Flash. Flash is phenomenal. He's great. He knows. I'm going to say this too a lot. He knows wrestling. Matter of fact, you were just trying to call him not too long ago. He knows how to. He knows everything. When I went to Puerto Rico, when Stan and I went to Puerto Rico, he was the first person we got in touch with. And he worked for the other company, and that was like, you can't talk to the other guy from the other company. It was like, well, we don't know nobody else here. And I'm not going to be stuck in his island and not know nobody. But he comes here every weekend and, works hard and, does whatever I ask him to. And here he does. He respects my decision because I'm the one who ultimately has to make the decision. He'll come up with some great angle, and he's like, I can shoot it down, or I can say we're doing it. And when I shoot it down, he goes, oh, you just don't like my stuff. So we go back and forth with that. But he deserves, he deserves to be in this business. He deserves to have a job, actually. He's really that good.
Breaking away
from a little bit hardcore for me. I don't like all the hardcore stuff, but he likes it.
Yeah. Breaking away from that real quick, I just realized a huge oversight on my part. Your trip, the time in Puerto Rico, how was that? Usually everybody's, it's a horror story, and they don't ever want to go back, or they love it.
Well, I'd say I never want to go back, but I don't want to go back anytime soon. No, 3 months there. It wasn't the worst one because it was a lot of good things to learn from wrestling. I learned a lot of wrestling things, but being away from home for 3 months, especially around the holidays, Thanksgiving and Christmas, which sucked. And, so Stanley turned 21 while he was in Puerto Rico and was not happy about it.
Yeah.
Puerto Rico is what it is. You go there, you wrestle, stay out of trouble, and get back home. Because you don't want to mess up there. You don't want, you just don't want to. Maybe I'm scared. I don't know. Call me what you want, but I just don't want to get screwed up and be stuck in Puerto Rico and can't get out of there. You know what I mean? But, everything, we won the tag titles down there, which, I thought was neat for us because here we are, the Americans coming in winning the Puerto Rican Tag Team Championships, and it was good. And, we had a lot of good matches, and they bled like crazy, and we did. They bled like crazy. And we didn't really do much partying either. Stanley went on the beach a lot, and I didn't even drink there very much. That's what's so sad about it. I didn't even drink there. So a lot of people be happy to hear that. I didn't even drink hardly. I lost a lot of weight while I was there. Came back and was happy to be back. And I didn't eat their food. I hated their food. I did hate their food. I did remember that.
Yeah, that's another one of the common things you hear when people come back, that the food was awful and there is an uneasiness down there that something's going to happen, or you might not get out of there. And
right, you want to get in and get out. That's the key.
But it's good to have on your resume another experience to fall back on.
Exactly.
All right, well, back to the names. Your current tag team partner, who you've already mentioned earlier, Mr. Johnny Dotson.
Johnny Dotson, I got it. I helped breaking the wrestling business. He's good athletic. I think sometimes he's very forgetful in the ring. I always end up cussing because he's forgetting spots. But he wants to make it work. He wants to be a big deal. He wants to be a star. He wants to be, a lot of things. It's just that sometimes he goes about it a whole different route than I do. And he and I have had discussions / arguments about how to make it, how to get there, and neither one of us are there. But, my take on it is if you're going to use the wrestling as a vehicle, then make sure wrestling's pushed first, not yourself, but wrestling, So all in all, Johnny's a good guy, and he and I get along, and it doesn't bother me, we tag up, but it's just sometimes he gets a little angry and headstrong, and I'm like, dude, there ain't no sense. It doesn't matter. I'm a very nonchalant person when I say it doesn't matter, because you're going to end up ultimately doing what they tell you to do anyway.
Yep. I love Johnny. Some of the most fun I ever had was tagging with him and Alan Steele when we were all just first starting out there in the Corinth and Selmer.
Right.
Like Wrestling You and Naughty by Nature and all those guys, and they were just a lot of fun to work with. Johnny's crazy, and I think that he's done a lot so far. In spite of his size, just what he's managed to accomplish so far is And
he can be bitter at times. He can be but I guess we all can. But I just sometimes don't worry about that. Don't just come on. The wrestling part is what I try to, that's basically our really relationship now. It's just wrestling because I don't really see him. So back when we first started, I was riding with him and Alan still rode every show together just about.
Mm-hmm.
And so, a little closer there, but him and Alan were closer than we were. But, he's never done anything wrong to me.
Speaking of Corinth, promoter Rodney Grimes.
Rodney Grimes. Let me see if I can say Rodney. He reminded me of Bill Dundee at one time. I remember that. Always spoke to me very nice when he paid me when he said he was going to pay me. I didn't too much care for some of the stuff they did on the show, but he's the boss. So he did what he had to do, but I didn't like him in the wrestling role. I didn't like that. Nothing against him. I just didn't like him in the wrestling role. I think he's more of the promoter like.
You had a guy with the build of an 8-year-old kid walking around with 2 heavyweight title belts out there.
It's a little far-fetched.
The heels, that pretty much sums that up. A guy who gets a lot of play around the area and a lot of build up. Austin Lane.
Austin Lane. I've never even wrestled Austin Lane. This is the sad thing about it because I think we've always said we wanted to wrestle each other. I think that Austin is he loves the high flying. He likes spots and stuff like that. I know he loves that. He's always been nice to me and always said something about working. I never really talked, never really hung out with him. Never really, I know he's a big fan of TNAs and I think he just recently went down there and did some kind of tryout or something. And Well, I don't know. Either way. I mean, he's in the wrestling business. And, if he wants to come work, he can come work. I don't have anything bad to say about him. I just don't know him that well. I just know him as far as just wrestling. The times I've seen him wrestle.
Right.
And other than that, I just never really, really gave it much. I know that sounds bad, but I just never really gave it, much thought after that.
How about Kevin White?
Kevin White. I like Kevin White. I do like Kevin White. Kevin White to me reminds me of an old school heel. He's Dundee. He's wrestling, and that's what he is, and that's what he does. And for what Kevin does, gets over. Gets over with me. I like it. Or I wouldn't put it on the show. And and Kevin's always. Here's the crazy thing. Kevin and I are probably the only two guys that I'm probably the only guy that gets along with Kevin White. Seriously. I think he's like, we always sit around and go, man, what about, just talking, and I'm the only one that really talks to him. And it's so weird because some of the guys, well, Kevin, blah, blah. I said, well, that's what you guys think. Kevin's always been nice to me, and I've known Kevin for a long time, too. So, like Kevin first thing, we came to Power Pro. So, he went right over there and talked to him first. So, I was like, okay, there's Kevin White. Now we know somebody because it's Bill Dundee's student, and I've been working with Bill Dundee, so, it kind of had a natural connection already. So,
well, another a controversial figure of Memphis for years, Brian Christopher.
I knew that name was coming. Brian Christopher, the craziest guy I know. The craziest guy I know. I mean, he is crazy, but he's one hell of a performer also. I mean, he can perform and do what He knows his shit when he gets in the ring. He knows what he's doing. And some of his outside, we can go out someplace and I go, are you really doing this? I mean, some of the stuff I've seen him do, and people just, it's amazing. It's amazing that he gets away with what he gets away with. And he doesn't know how to slow down driving either. That's the scariest drive I've ever had in my entire life.
Another local guy, Danny B. Good or bad, be it whatever the occasion calls for.
Here we go. And the reason this comes up because we just had a big dispute the other night at the MAW show.
Oh, okay.
That's probably what you want to hear now. No, yeah.
I just lucked upon that one then.
Right. Danny B., one of the first guys I ever hung out with in the wrestling business. I mean, I actually was a mark for Danny B. I was like, man, this guy's over, Bob, big time. This guy's great. I don't think Danny B's the greatest wrestler. I think he has a hell of a lot of charisma. I mean, a shitload of charisma. More charisma than most people would ever have. And, here's our dispute. I don't think Danny wanted to drop the belt to Flash, which to me is like a travesty of justice. Who wouldn't want to lose to Flash? And because he's more concerned sometimes, I think, about how many people buy his pictures and so forth instead of how many people are actually paying to see him.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, well, you can get 50 people to come, and you can sell $50 worth of gimmicks. I'm thinking Jimmy Vang can sell outside at Walmart and sell $2,000 worth of gimmicks, but we ain't putting him in the main event. Nothing against Jimmy Vang, but I mean, he's not the main event guy here. The guy we're pushing is this guy. And, he lost the match in like 2 minutes and took his belt and left, which is, to me, why would you do all that? It ain't that serious. Come on. Yeah. Somebody had to lose to give you the belt. And that was not big enough.
That's not the first time I've heard that about him. I like Danny.
Personally, I like Danny. Don't get me wrong. But business-wise, it's hard to do business with him because here's the craziest thing you're about to hear. He's booked in Ripley on the 15th against Flash Flanagan. Now, whether he shows up or not, it's a totally different story. Because he knows that, he's going to be wrestling with Flash. And I'm thinking to myself, Flash is still going to win the match or whatever the finish would be. But it's not fair. To me, it's not fair to anybody else who laid down for you or put you over, and then you can't put somebody else over.
Right.
Like, I mean, how did you get the belt? You know what I'm saying? How did you know? Did you just go out and say, okay, I'm going to be champion today? No, you got to beat somebody. Somebody had to say, okay, you're going to be our champion. You're going to beat this guy. Okay. Now we know that. You know,
and now it's Flash. I mean, who's paid more dues in that area than Flash Flanagan?
Thank you very much. Out of respect for the rest of it and out of respect for Flash, I mean, my gosh, why not? But, you know, I don't, you know, he says that's not the reason why. You know, he said, he told Golden Boy that wasn't the reason why he did that. It's just he thought that I was putting all my eggs in one basket. I said, because I told him, I said, we're trying to make this thing work where, you know, if there's one booker, like, and not just say it just because it's me, but there's one booker that can book all the around here, we all can get together and everybody knows what's going on every show, because basically everybody who works on all the other shows work for me. And I'm the only show that runs consecutively every Saturday. Mm-hmm. So why not, if I already know these guys, just book angles that way, and then if we can get Lawler's help or Memphis' help, then use that. And he's like anti-Memphis or anti-Lawler or something like that. And I was like, dude, you cannot have Memphis if you don't have Jerry Lawler. I mean, what planet are we on? If you know you can't do that.
Right. And here's a name that went hand in hand. You for years you didn't hear Danny B without hearing this name, Chris Rocker.
Chris Rocker. I hope he's listening to this because he no-showed me that all those 4 days. Oh. Rocker and I are like some of the close, very, very close friends. But he didn't come to the show. So I wouldn't book him on the show at Memphis. I said, no, you're not coming to the New Days if you couldn't come to the other shows. And I think Rocker sometimes, I mean, I always put him on the wishy-washy side sometimes when you book him because he may show up and he might not show up. But when he's there, he does his job. When he ain't there, he makes me mad as hell.
Fair enough. Mentioned earlier, a friend of yours, you've known him since back in the OVW days, Nick Dinsmore.
The best wrestler ever. The best wrestler. Now, when it comes to, you know, pro wrestling and, you know, entertainment, but the best wrestler I've ever been in the ring with is Nick Dinsmore. He will wrestle you, and he think, you know, he's like Dean Malenko in a sense. You know what I'm saying? He just goes.
Do you think maybe he'll be back under something new that will capitalize more on that wrestling talent in years?
I hope so.
WWE.
I hope so, but he understands. You know, I think he's thinking, hey, if I get my job, I can do whatever they tell me to do. Here we are in this world of we do what we're told because we're working for somebody. But you know, I wish, and most people wish that he would get back. They would take him back and do something that would be more him.
Yeah, because, I mean, Lord knows, he took the Eugene character and ran with it, and nobody could have done anything more with it than what he did. I mean, he was tremendous at it. But I don't think it utilized his skills as good as, you know, another character could have.
Right, and that's what you ultimately, you know, that's what most people say. Well, you know, well, if they would have just used him as Nick Dinsmore, blah, blah, he would have been great. Yeah, only if they wanted him to be, you know. You have to realize, you know, that you're still working, you know, you're working for someone. And they're going to be the ones who make that decision, and that's what it is, you know. So they told him you'd be doing this, okay, jump right on it and do what he had to do, and that's what he did, and he was good at it. You're right. I don't know anybody else who could have done a Eugene gimmick. I really don't.
Here's a name from the Power Pro days, and this guy was branded to be one of the next big stars. It was just a matter of time before he went to WWE and was going to be big. And he's kind of faded into obscurity. I think he's running a wrestling school up north, Steve Bradley.
Oh, my gosh. Steve Bradley was the most underrated wrestler in the world. He deserved to be there. He could, I think he was wrestling like since he was 14 or 15 years old and could do everything. Talk, look good, could, you know, wrestle, could, you know, entertaining, you know, cutting edge. Steve Bradley used to hang out with Steve Bradley a lot. And I was like, man, you know, you need to be there. You know, when they moved him to OVW, I was like, oh, man, hopefully he's finally going to get out of there. But then they just let him go.
The theory amongst a lot of people was the fact that they signed Rob Van Dam around that time, and they felt they were too similar, and that's what led to them getting rid of him, that they were going to groom him to be their Rob Van Dam. Do you think there's any truth to that? Or
I don't know. I didn't ever hear why, or, you know, I didn't. Back then, when I heard I was up in OVW too at the time, but they say he was gone. I was like, why? Nobody said anything, you know, and I didn't even really know about the Rob Van Dam thing. It's the first time I heard that. I don't know. It's one of those things that make you go, why did he do that? But, you know, that's, you know, maybe they had a different vision, different, you know, outlook or whatever. So, you know, that's kind of what they went with. But he's great. I mean, I can't put him over anymore with me because he really is that good. Him and Kurt Angle had some of the best matches I've ever seen.
Yeah, they really did.
Unbelievable matches. I was like, oh my God, these guys are, I've been sitting there watching their matches going, I should have bought a ticket to see this.
A name from this area or around the Tupelo area and he's done some work in Memphis and Hollywood Jimmy Blaylock.
He's a gimmick, man. He's gimmicky. I like it. I like the gimmicky stuff. I think I wish that we could do. I wish there was more stuff he would do. Like he's very. I know that he's been. Like we were gonna do something with his suit one day. He's like, don't mess up the suit. Don't mess up the suit. I was like, that would be great. That's what the whole thing is because he's big on that Fear Factor kind of stuff and he's and he's got all the gimmicky stuff at the fun shop and the whatever it is, like a trick or treat or something like that, which I think is great. But I just think if we could do more stuff with him, or somebody can get him in the ring and I've never seen him take a bump. That's what it is. I've just never seen him take a bump. I've only seen him manage a couple of times. I've never seen him really take a bump. And he's always been nice to me. And but I've never really really sat down and really talked because I was actually going to bring him in earlier this year. And the things that we were going to do kind of fell through because he's a good manager. I just didn't know what that whole situation just fell through. I just think if we had him, I wanted to bump him around or do something with him physical.
Right. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think he's got some back problems and stuff that's pretty much, why he...
Oh, so I never knew that. See, I never knew. I never knew why.
The last time I worked with him about a year or so ago, he had some back problems because we were told, don't touch him, don't touch him. So I guess maybe that's the
see, because whenever I hear that, I think, why can't we touch him? It's just wrestling.
Right.
You're supposed to touch him.
Another name that was mentioned earlier, Terry Golden.
Terry Golden helped me out a lot. Terry Golden, I spent one Christmas with Terry Golden at his parents' house. He helped me out a lot. I wouldn't have been in Music City Wrestling if it wasn't for him. I wouldn't have been, I wouldn't have done a lot of things. I wouldn't have just really got up and just left. Going from Brighton or from Mumford at the time to Memphis to Power Pro. Terry was supposed to go. Something fell through with him going, but he respected because he and I were riding buddies, and he didn't get to go, and I was like, man, I'm going. I'm still going. He's like, all right, but he's always helped me out. And matter of fact, like if I ever call or something like that, like with lights and stuff for our buildings for wrestling, he helped me out on that a million times, and he's always helped me out, no matter what.
I got to mention a friend of mine who I know is a friend of yours, Neil the Real Deal Taylor.
The Real Deal Neil Taylor. I think here's my honest. I like he and I. If he drinks my beer again, no. Anyway, he and I are very good friends. I just think he needs to wrestle more. Get out of that. We tease him about the power driver he took on TV because it was horrible. It was so bad. Like, oh my God, you never seen Lawler give a power driver? He's like, I never took one. But I just wish he would wrestle more places. I know him and Rocker hang out pretty tight. I just never see him enough. Because he'd be in a territory or company for a little bit, and then he's gone. And then you're like, dude, you could have been there, and they would have probably done something.
Yeah, I've definitely been on him about getting out and working somewhere outside of the local area. That's what you got to do. It's
like he's in a safe haven, and I can understand that, but get out of there.
Well, I've got 1 minute left, so we're going to have the big finish here. Jerry the King Lawler.
Jerry the King Lawler, without a doubt, and I guess everybody knows this is obviously my favorite wrestler of all time. Seriously, there's nothing bad I can say. He is the king of. If he wasn't wrestling, I wouldn't have watched wrestling. And something about Jerry Lawler that captivated Memphis. When you can hold a crowd of 11,000 people in your hand and then just make them do what you want them to do. It's amazing. And he's good at what he does. And, people go, well, he doesn't do this. He doesn't have to.
Right.
He can talk you into the building. He can, he can make you come in the building by him beating up somebody or him getting beat up. He does it all. He doesn't have to flip and flop and all that kind of stuff. He's good at what he does. And, and that's why, it's just crazy. It's where he's nobody better. I know everybody goes, oh, you can't say, but he's that's what did it. He's the one that inspired me to be a wrestler because it was Jerry Lawler, and and plus he's very nice to me, so that doesn't hurt either. So
right. Well, Derrick, we thank you for joining us. It's been a great interview, and
I'm sorry to get to knock everybody. You know how I know that you shoot interviews like to go knocking everybody, but I was just telling the truth. That's me.
That's right. Well, all right, man. Thanks, and we'll have to have you on again sometime.
All right, man. Thank you, man.
Bye.
All right, bye.